The whole aspect of recession, I've been doing a lot of studying and reading, and one of the people that I have a lot of admiration for, he talks about what's going on in Europe right now as well as in China. I mean, Europe, Russia has cut off the flow of oil, they cut off the pipeline, and they're saying it's for maintenance issues, but it doesn't take much to figure out underneath all of that. What they're talking about is, you guys are hurting us with your sanctions. We want you to, lift your sanctions so that we can. Then if you do that, then we'll have, the oil. But then China on the other end, other part of the globe, they just locked down 60 million people because of COVID. And why aren't they using vaccinations? I don't get it, Jeremiah. I mean, It just seems like the world, for at least from that perspective, it looks like it's really causing a lot of chaos, right?
Yeah, the world is they're not going nuts. That's too much to say, but there's a lot of self-inflicted and neighbor-inflicted pain that we're having to deal with on top of the economic situation we've been in. But as we're walking through this, I think it's a great perspective to start with kind of the world of what's going on, and you've done a lot of reading on this, and so have I. But I mean, I think the China one is just really interesting. That I think I saw this last week that the CDC is lifting a lot of the U.S. regulations. The big one being the 6 feet separation, and you compare that to China, who is doing another lockdown. Like I think they said this last week, 60 million were locked down. It's just interesting of whether or not there's the best policy or the best way to do it. I'm not sure, but China has a lot of self-inflicted pain that is reverberating throughout the whole world.
Right. You're listening to Randy Barkley. I'm Randy Barkley, and that's Jeremiah Lee, and we're with Tricord Advisors. I'm a certified financial planner as well as Jeremiah is. Jeremiah also holds the distinction of being an attorney, and he helps our clients with some legal issues like estate planning and contractual law, business sale, and succession and such. We're here to help you make smart decisions about your money. And when the sailing is smooth, everything is fine, but we're in turbulent waters right now. We've kind of entered some times politically and economically where people are a little bit more agitated, a little bit more concerned about the future. On a global perspective, let's give you some information that I think is really important for you to get a hold of. First of all, the dollar is strengthening. What does that do for us as Americans with our dollar? When you take a comparison of our dollar with other currencies, that means that we can buy things from other countries and it costs us less. Now, we've also got quantitative tightening. In other words, the Treasury is not renewing, and it's rolling off at about $95 billion a month. Now, a lot of times that would cause more credit issues, in other words, liquidity. But what's interesting is that foreign dollars are coming in. They're coming in at the rate of equal to or greater than that $95 billion. So what does that do? That puts liquidity back in the system. And that foreign dollars, they're not just letting it sit in the bank. They're buying bonds, they're buying treasuries, they're also buying stocks. The other thing that's positive for the U.S. is that we are energy independent. We are not dependent upon some foreign nation to be able to provide our supply of energy. The other thing, we just heard that Saudi Arabia this last week cut back their production. It was really a slap in the face to Biden. Biden went over there specifically to meet with Saudi Arabia and asked them to increase their production, not decrease. And what did they do? They cut back 100,000 barrels a day in oil. Now, a side note, most people don't realize this, but U.S. drivers, we have cut back our use of gasoline by almost 600,000 gallons a day because we're just driving less, and we made adjustments. So that cutback by Saudi Arabia really has no impact. The higher gasoline prices have had more of an impact than they can have on us right now. So from a global perspective, yeah, we got problems in the world, but in the United States, the census right now is that we're not going to move into a general recession, but we're going to have what is referred to as a rolling recession. In other words, different sectors of the economy are going to be affected differently over time. And as things kind of settle out, for example, right now we look at the real estate, construction. Single family residences are starting to kind of slow down, so it's having an impact on that. But on multifamily, it's not only doing well, but it's actually speeding up. So we're seeing some seesaw effects here based upon the different segments of the society.
Yeah, Randy, I really like
So the
your
question are we going to have a general recession? Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, are we? Yeah, I really like the funnel you have there of talking about the global, this large piece and how that relates back to where we are today. And the interesting part that I see in all this is automatically as you're talking, I'm hearing, okay, well, is that good for us? Is that bad for us? You said the dollar's strong. Well, that's great for us as consumers. But I think of small businesses that need to buy things or they need to sell things overseas, that becomes more expensive for exports. And I think where you're getting
Right.
down to, and I think that's a great funnel of saying
Right.
it changes a little bit of who's going to be a winner, who's going to be a loser. And it's not just a small businesses or big businesses. I mean, I think your comment that it's kind of rolling, it's kind of sector by sector. And we're having, some issues, but we're also going to see some real
Right.
strength as well as some real struggle, depending what part of the economy you're in.
I mean, the general thought and consensus regarding interest rates, because that's the thing that the federal, we talked about last week. Jerome Powell said, no, we're going to increase interest rates. We're going to go after inflation with a much stronger attitude about it than what we've done in the past. But also, if you look at some of the key indicators, inflation is coming down. We're starting to see some key, like for example, used car sales. The price of cars is coming down. If you look at lumber prices, some of the food products, all these things are coming down. So we're starting to see a general decline. Some of that has to do with the fact that we have a strong dollar. We're able to buy things and it costs us less because of the strength of our economy versus our trading partners.
Mm-hmm. And it's a good moment to be in the United States. We talked about this before. There's country pride and there's excitement of where we are. There's also just the economic reality of we are not experiencing the same levels of pain that other people are and will continue to. We in Southern California were upset when our gas prices went over $6 a gallon, and that was difficult for a lot of people. But I also acknowledge, some of the other places in the world, they're dealing with much more significant results from where we're at. And the comment you made, I think, is really meaningful of the experience we have of, there are small businesses that are really, really struggling. We're just reading an article about, people who sell rugs or, perform house cleaning services. Some of those industries are really tough in that they're a luxury item that people don't buy when they feel like things are tight, and or they're fuel intensive. One of this small businesswoman, she was driving places and saying her costs were just going up exponentially as she was having to pay for fuel. So those industries are hurting. But then you look at Walmart or some of these other places that they're having some record moments of these great sales, and people who used to be shopping at other stores are now shopping primarily at Walmart, and that is good for Walmart. It boosts for it. So in a global, in a country, in an industry, and even to an individual, we're having just a diversity of experiences as we deal with this.
And I think again, what we have in the United States here that we have to really be cognitive of, and that is unemployment is still low, and we're still getting a lot. I mean, businesses are still looking for employees. But the positive is that wages are starting to level off. In other words, employers aren't having to compete as much as they did just even a few months ago, and they're finding that employees are sticking. They're staying in their job, and they're not as mobile, I guess is the best way to say that. It's hard for an employer to hire somebody and then people don't even show up. Well, we're hearing less and less of those kinds of issues and circumstances with companies now, right?
Yeah, which is a great step forward, right? Hiring was really, really tough
Right.
6 months ago, and the more people I'm hearing that they found people, they found the people they needed. It's not perfect, it's not great. They're still
Right.
dealing with some shortages, but generally they found the key spots they needed. And part of it also is just the I think the American ingenuity, but I mean the world ingenuity, human ingenuity, but of people shifting. There's a number of folks who would never have had online employees, and now they have stepped to that. They've brought people in that are remote workers and found great resources. I mean, even just anecdotally for myself, our company probably 4 years ago would not have had remote workers, whereas now we have folks that do work remote on a regular basis. My sister even just found a job.
It would have been very hard for me to agree with that whole concept 4 years ago.
Yep.
Now I'm much more, I accept it because that's just the way it is right now.
Yep. And the talent pool that we have access to is useful. And that's something that we didn't have before. And I'm starting to say my sister just has a job now that she's completely remote, and that's a new dynamic, for her. And it's a great job and it's a great future, but it allows some freedom that didn't exist a few years ago. And I think small employers are dealing with that. They're finding new ways to be ingenuitive and to fill the needs they have. And hopefully it gives us a stronger society and a stronger community on the back end.
Yeah, and I think the kind of jobs, we want to kind of focus on how the economy is affecting different kinds of companies. And there are companies, particularly small businesses, that were created because of COVID, and they developed a product that they could sell over the internet, or as a service base, or as kind of a ancillary product that was really good. I mean, a prime example, much larger situation, like Peloton. Peloton, everybody was locked down. They wanted to get these bikes, these stationary bikes in, but now that COVID is not as severe as it was, people don't feel like they have to be isolated and locked up in their home. Well, Peloton sales have just fallen off. They've plummeted because people say, no, I want to be outside. I want to be inside. But this is going on a much smaller scale. This is going to a lot of companies that develop products. And now all of a sudden, as we move into this 2022, as we mature into this year, it's really hurting these small businesses because they're providing a product that isn't need-based. It is a want-based, right? Consumer discretionary.
Right. And Peloton, I think, will always exist. That's a great example. Someone will buy them if they get too inexpensive, but they will always exist. But the height at how popular they were and how expensive things were, and the money that was flowing into the factories they were building.
Right.
I think you're right. I think we've turned a corner, and they will not be this colossal phenom, but rather they'll be a company. There'll be one more company that produces a product, but it's not going to be the future that at one point was projected for them. And we're shifting, and like there'll be winners and losers. And a lot of, like, when we do investing, we're not here to pick this one and bet the farm. We're here to say we want a broad connection of all the companies, and we want to participate as there are winners, and we want to to the extent available avoid the losers, but acknowledging that we're here to ride the whole economy and not just pick individual companies.
I think that what we want to do is have a little bit more conversation about how this breaks down to people that are entering into retirement. If you've just entered into retirement or you're just approaching it. So when we come back, Jeremiah and I want to talk more about how do you take money out? How do you invest your money? How do you do some things so that you secure your future? Because this is just a moment in time. And for most of our clients, it's going to be a 20 or 30 year timeline as far as receiving income from their retirement accounts. So when we come back, we're going to spend a little bit more time digging down into the retirement aspects